It's always difficult for me to record a review for something like an Evo or an Impreza because you kind of already know what you're getting. Each generation gets, much like a Porsche 911, a little bit better, a little bit more powerful, a little bit faster, and even though you'll have endless arguments back and forth on what generation people prefer and for what reason, and certainly different generations will have wildly different values. Just compare a Subaru 22B, for example, with its rarity and rally homologated DNA, to a number of other Subarus which, at least here in the UK, really are not that expensive to buy. They haven't had the crazy pop in price that many Mitsubishi Evos have had. And is that a shame? Or is it not? You know, on the one hand, having an Evo was a good investment in many cases, but then a Subaru is also more attainable, which makes it a great deal. There are pros and cons to either side of the argument. And the great thing I think about the Evo versus Subaru debate, which has always been a part of Gran Turismo and always been a part of the Japanese car scene in real life, and for good reason, they are great rivals, especially when it comes to WRC, it doesn't actually really matter which side you prefer because they're both so good. You can argue back and forth on the smaller details. Mitsubishi will typically have a harder edge, a sharper design, a bit more of an aggressive approach, but still very forgiving. And then a Subaru is a little bit more low down, a little bit chunkier, a little bit more muscle to its engine, a bit more torque, softer, rounder edges, and a bit more of a chunky appearance. But either way, you get a great car. They're extremely forgiving, phenomenally quick, fantastic through corners, endless grip, great brakes. They're not overly heavy, so you don't really have to strip that much weight out of them. And even for their power, they punch well above their weight, as many Japanese cars do. I mean, even in real life, you'd struggle to find even a modern car which could rival just how good an Evo or a Subaru still are 20 years on for their power level. You know, a modern hot hatch with 280 horses, well sure, on paper they might be as quick, but in reality, I feel like 9 times out of 10, if you get the two of them in a road race, especially around the twisty stuff, the new car isn't going to run away with a victory necessarily. They are still in the battle, they're still in the fight, and they are still very much very significant performance cars. And that's a testament to just how good they were for their time, that they're still that good now. Now in the game, this is one of the relatively rare occasions in Gran Turismo 7 where a JDM car hasn't gone insane on price. Even the Evo that we talked about yesterday is 100 grand, for no real good reason. This one's 50,000, and it's 50,000 from the Subaru dealer, so you don't even have to wait for a legendary dealership or a used dealership. I did mention, of course, in my review for 1.35 that for some weird reason it's available in the used dealer as well, but it's only 8 grand cheaper, which begs the question of why even bother buying it. You may as well just buy the new one. In terms of the visual modifications, it's quite cool. You can change out the wing for different styles, even recreate different versions like a Spec C. You can debadge the grille, put some interesting looking little chin splitters on it. I do actually have a future special project based on this generation of car, which some of you might be familiar with, but it is a little bit more of an obscure one, so if you are a fan of that, then definitely stick around for future special projects. But in terms of performance, I mean, the reason why they're so difficult for me to review is there are some cars that are literally just good at everything. And Subarus and Evos are kind of one of those. They're just really good. There isn't really any significant downside aside from personal preference. I've seen some people mention the sentiment to the effect of GTR syndrome, which is like having umpteen Subarus and umpteen Evos instead of focusing on something genuinely different or new. And although I can always understand that, sure, each generation is at least a bit different. In games like Gran Turismo 5 and 6, where you had so many different variations, well, to me that is pretty unarguably taking it too far. But when it comes to a game like this, then sure, this is different to other Subarus. It does feel different, it does perform differently, so you can always make that argument, but I don't feel angry at it, and it is a great car. Ultimately, it's going to be a short review, I guess, because that really is all I have to say about the car. It's a fantastic vehicle for a pretty decent price. I would have probably guessed more like a 30 grand price tag, not 50, but it's not like 50,000 is difficult to get in Gran Turismo 7, or really in any Gran Turismo game. You know what you're getting. If you haven't already bought it, of course it's worth a look. It's a very useful car, especially given that the power is good at 286 horses, the point level is already below 500 stock, 491, and even though the weight is a little bit higher than I remembered, at 1460, that's still a lot lighter than many modern cars. And even if you, for example, only focused on brakes, suspension, perhaps changing the transmission, but even then that would be optional, and certainly dropping the weight a little bit, you've already got yourself what was already great, and now it's an absolute weapon. So with very, very minimal tweaking, or even none, they're fantastic cars, and that really is all there is to say. So I'd love to hear your thoughts down below, especially, to be honest, if there are any people who don't like the car. I'd be really curious to know why, because most of the dislike that I see about this car, if any, tends to be one or two things. Either it's yet another Subaru, when you'd rather have something else, which, you know, each to their own, or I know some people aren't as much of a fan of the look of this car, which is a similar thing that I hear said about the kidney grille version that came after as well. To me, I like the look well enough. So let me know down below. Of course, that is it for my coverage of the 3 cars this time around. Of course, stick around on the channel for more GT7 content, including tunes and various other things, and of course reviewing all the cars that come out every month. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.